does life have meaning? If so, what is it? Well, philosophers have been debating this question for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, and many have tried to come up with an answer. Some turn to religion, while others focus solely on the physical world. Some are pessimistic, while others are optimistic. It's hard to say if there will ever be a consensus on which answer is correct, so which you choose to believe is up to you. Now, what does this have to do with ENA Dream BBQ? The answer? Absurdism. The game is a strange experience that may at first glance not make any sense at all, but hidden in its bizarre landscape is a beautifully artistic reflection on the human condition and life. The game is really worth experiencing yourself, so before I continue, spoiler warning. In order to understand ENA Dream BBQ, we first need to understand a bit about absurdism, and consequently, Absurdist art. The philosophy began in the 20th century, when Europe was experiencing a radical shift in how people lived. The Industrial Revolution changed almost everything, and war was quickly becoming deadlier and deadlier. As a result, people were becoming more and more pessimistic, and even questioning if life was worth living at all. In response came absurdism. At its core, the philosophy simply states that life is absurd, meaning that life doesn't really have a cohesive meaning or greater purpose. It can be incredibly kind or cruel to us without any sense of rhyme or reason. But that isn't to say that absurdism believes we should just give up. Instead, it states that we should accept the absurd for what it is, and keep going regardless. In other words, meaning comes not from finding something, but rather from the search itself. The most famous example is Albert Camus's writing about Sisyphus, a man destined to infinitely roll a rock up a hill only for it to fall down again and again. Camus writes that despite the absurdity of Sisyphus's fate, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. This interpretation is meant to be a reflection of us, going through our day-to-day lives without a greater purpose, sometimes doing meaningless, boring things, yet still being able to be happy. Whether or not you buy into this philosophy, it has been quite influential across the Western world. To go along with absurdist philosophy came Absurdist/surrealist art, which seeks to take seemingly normal aspects of life and distort them. The idea behind this is to show how if we change our perspective, life doesn't really make any sense in any objective way. It only really makes sense to us because that's what we're used to. Perhaps the most famous artist who did this is Salvador Dali. If clocks could melt like ice cream, or animals had freakishly long legs, it wouldn't make life any more or less meaningful, just different. In this absurdity, we have the ability to reflect upon our own lives and realize things we otherwise wouldn't think about. Enter ENA Dream BBQ. The game begins in an empty town with red skies, endless rows of houses and shops. Above is a man swimming. We walk around and around until we find a blue and purple bed. The significance of this imagery isn't clear yet, so just keep it in mind for later. After going to sleep, we wake up in what appears to be a temple of some sort. Walking upstairs, a blue and red figure approaches the screen. This is ENA, the main character of the story who we are playing as. We also get introduced to Dracula, who claims he's the boss, and a Japanese frogman who immediately tells us not to believe Dracula. In response, ENA spews some business jargon like, "What are our pain points? What's the business strategy?" But also some straightforward words like, "Just tell me about the dumb job already," with each of ENA's sides taking on different personalities, red being businesslike, and blue being angry. Then, the frogman tells us that today's job is to find the boss, but first you need to clear out the smoke filling the space. At this point, you might already feel the absurdism is starting to get out of hand, but the story is still pretty comprehensible. You have a job, and need to do it, maybe with the help of some strange people. This isn't a foreign concept. I feel as though many people, metaphorically speaking, have worked with the Dracula or Frogman. It is in familiarity mixed with strangeness we can reflect. Perhaps this game is trying to highlight how weird it is from an outside perspective that we go about our daily lives doing these strange jobs. It's not like our ancient ancestors needed accounting or door-to-door salesmen to survive. An alternate interpretation could also be the universalness of jobs. Even in a world like this, people still need to apply themselves to something. Even in a world as absurd as theirs, they wish to have purpose. Starting the search, we head to the receptionist, who informs us that we're too late. The boss isn't even born yet, and then calls us broke. In response, Blue ENA calls the receptionist cheap, and Red ENA adds that despite being cheap, they are still a child of God. The receptionist angrily brushes off these comments and tells us that the authorities of the doors are genies. They are the only ones who can call off the smoke. Then, the frogman calls to tell us that because of the smoke, he won't be able to help us find the genie, so it's up to us. An interesting thing to note from this interaction is the presence of money. Even in a world like this, which is seemingly nonsensical, there is still currency, and the idea of rich versus poor. The other interesting thing is ENA's belief in God. If I'm not mistaken, ENA is the only character in the entire game that mentions God, which speaks to an interesting part of her character. More on this later. Next, we return to the lobby area to meet new people. First, a blue man claims to be the boss, and then calls us unpopular and unwelcome. Second, a piggy bank breaks to reveal a money man. He tells us of the lonely door, which is presumably where we will be going to find the smoke. Last, we talk to a lady with stuff growing out of her head, who says she just wants to find an entity who can organize the horse door's new genie inauguration. If we find somebody, we should fax her a blood sample. This marks the second person to immediately dislike ENA, both the receptionist and now the blue man. It also brings up the idea of blood as being a way to identify someone. Both of these things are mentioned several times throughout the events of the game. One popular theory is that the ENA world is a virtual world, reminiscent of the chaos of the internet. A way to explain the blood samples could be that they are pieces of code, used to identify the programs that live in this world. A virtual world navigated through doors, i.e. shortcuts to files. After walking through the lonely door, there's an urge to go to the bathroom, and looking through the window, there's a giant flying hippo, while you hear something about terminals, no doubt being airplane related. Downstairs, there are plenty more strange creatures. A bubble guy who reminds me a lot of an Osmosis Jones type cell, 3 witch ladies who are looking for their friend, a horse guy who offers you money to find his children, a hoarder at the bridge who wants a guy to stop staring at him, a guy who runs out of a house and tells you the taxi driver is skipping work, a wizard who makes clones of himself only to zap it out of existence, and finally an unemployed girl. She's surprised when she sees us and says, "Wait, you are ENA? You have a job?" To which ENA replies, "More of a lifestyle. That's my destiny. God knows the rest." Here is the second instance of ENA mentioning God. Strangely, after this statement, the girl gets mad at ENA, saying, "I'm nice to you and this is the thanks I get?" It's unclear whether this is a direct response to ENA's comments about God, or if it's because she thinks ENA is making fun of her for being unemployed. Moving on to one of the final people we meet in this stage is a gumball machine guy, who says he cannot sell to ENA. She screams at him that she isn't doing what he thinks she's doing. All the while, there are flashbacks of bullet casings falling. He's convinced, but he still won't sell you anything but mayonnaise. This is where the imagery from the beginning of the game comes back into play. ENA obviously has some history with violence, and is unpopular across the world she visits. The very beginning of the game could perhaps symbolize something darker. Empty houses and a sky someone is swimming in could perhaps mean that the sky is made of blood. The people that ENA killed in a previous time, whose houses are now empty. Perhaps ENA is just trying to live her best salesman life in the present, but is haunted by people remembering who she was. This pairs well with the absurdism present throughout the game. The Absurdist philosophy was created partially in response to the horrors of war and the killings, just as the philosophers of Europe had to find some way to deal with the millions who had died in the world wars. Perhaps the world of ENA must do the same. ENA's dedication to her job is perhaps her trying to find a meaningful life that does not involve fighting. Honoring that dedication, we must get closer to the bathroom. Traditionally, one could string together the quest to eventually get across the bridge, but one could also find a hole in the back of a building that leads to the taxi driver's head. The taxi driver will then lead you to the Purge Event. Inside an ear, we enter the ticket buying area for the illegal Purge Event, which is interesting because what exactly makes something illegal in this world? Are there governments and taxes? In any case, because we are ENA, we will need to give up a whole limb to enter. Inside, we find rows and rows of identical rooms full of people partying, one of which is the unemployed girl, which isn't too surprising. The endless maze continues until we find a lady hanging upside down who likes to talk in 4-letter words. We turn to reveal ENA is scattered in a tree with her red side missing, saying, "I need to get back to my deplorable job," and "I am feeling sick in this place." Word Girl says that there's no going back, we just need to find the person to feed. And then the room starts filling with liquid. For a short segment, we appear as a strange yellow creature that runs around until we are eaten. Then we appear in a new land. ENA is back together in one piece, but now has a hole in her stomach, and Red is still gone. ENA complains that her head hurts and asks for coffee, like she has a hangover. The being in front of us simply points to the giant porta potty, and ENA proclaims that she hates herself before looking like she's going to vomit. There are many different ways to interpret the Purge Event. One way to interpret the event is as a means of purging stress and worries, just like how parties can be in our world. ENA may not be able to party because of her history and a feeling that she doesn't deserve to take a break from work. Another could be that it purges you of your masks and opens you up to your true self. I would wager that Blue ENA is a more honest version of ENA, since Red seems to be a work-only persona. A final idea is that the Purge Event could be related to the computer-like essence of this world. The reason why it may be illegal is that the Purge Event is the deletion of files, which would likely be seen as a terrible thing to do in a virtual world. Maybe ENA has a hole in her stomach because she deleted something from herself. Continuing on, if you went the Purge Event route, you could possibly parkour your way across the gap to the bathroom, but most likely will fall. If you do, you will end up in a land with houses. You'll need to find the correct one, and then pass through a tunnel full of flowers, eventually ending up before a shattered statue. It gives a chilling message to ENA. Forgiveness is only a gift you can never have. ENA, however, seems to have recovered from the party, and Red ENA is back to inform the broken Genie that she just wants to clear the smoke. In response, the Genie pulls forth a golden statue, one to show ENA a reality where she achieved her deepest desires. A message flashes across the screen. All it takes is the right place and the right food. ENA then turns off the smoke machine and walks through the door. We momentarily return to the party scene, except nobody is there. Through the door again, we arrive at the strange land from before, but with targets on the wall and graves scattered across the ground. Cubes fill our screen before we are swallowed up by them. In a cutscene, faceless ENA struggles to get out of a pyramid structure before her skeleton bursts forward and falls into a pit lined with code. After the credits run, we appear back at the lobby. Alternatively, if you completed all the quests from before instead of going to the Purge Event, you have a tool to help you cross the bridge. If you use it, you can successfully reach the bathroom without doing any parkour, and find the Genie, this time alive. She starts singing, enacting a miracle to relieve you of your sins, closing up the hole and allowing you to ascend to a higher plane, and then realizes that you're ENA, and undoes all the blessing. In disappointment, she goes back down into the well, saying her business is finished, but Blue ENA yells at her convincingly enough to get her to come back. For your courage, she offers you one aspiration, although it's not really a choice, since all but one she refuses to fulfill. The most interesting unavailable choice is the punishment of the moon, to which she replies that nobody deserves to be punished for being born, except you, of course. Choosing the one available option to tell her about the boss and the smoke, the genie responds that you don't even know the meaning of those words, and that worries and fears will only betray your true goals. Shortly after, you are able to go turn off the smoke and return to the lobby as with the other ending. This is the end of Chapter 1, the only part of the game out right now. So far, ENA Dream BBQ is a masterfully artistic experience and a beautiful absurdist story. Throughout the game, we can piece together a picture of ENA's life. At some point, she was likely involved in a war and violence, and maybe that was even her original purpose. She may have been created for this purpose by a god of some sort, whom she still believes in to this day, even though most others don't. Like the European philosophers of the 1900s, after the wars and the era of absolute belief in God were over, she needed something to make sense of it all. I believe the current ENA and the story we play through is the story of a lost woman trying to find a purpose in life after her original God-given one was gone. In this perhaps virtual world, a job is a purpose, so she dedicates herself to it. She struggles with the fact that everyone hates her for her past and the absurdity of the world she lives in, with it barely being comprehensible, but pushes on with her job regardless. Even if all that struggle was just to turn off some smoke, the journey gives ENA purpose. In the words of Camus, one must imagine ENA happy. In this, I think we can all learn something from ENA and absurdism. No matter how strange life may get, just keep on going. Whether that means you have to go on a multi-dimensional journey to turn off a smoke machine, or just clock in for work, the fight itself can give our lives meaning. Or, at the very least, we can continue the fight long enough for Part 2 to come out. I'm really looking forward to how they develop the game further, and will certainly be making a video on the full game once it comes out. And with that, I think I have said all I have to say about ENA Dream BBQ for now. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you to my subscribers and Patreon supporters, and see you next week.